On the eve of Mother's Day, the dead speak softly, but their secrets scream. The Hartley estate was quiet that evening, wrapped in the kind of stillness that only grief leaves behind. Savannah Hartley stood alone in her late father's study, surrounded by the ghosts of a man everyone believed had no secrets. The room still smelled faintly of pipe tobacco and the oak polish he'd used religiously, familiar, grounding, and yet hollow. She hadn't planned to be here. She wasn't even sure why she'd opened the old armoire where he kept his Bibles. The family was gathering tomorrow. Cards had been written, flowers ordered, and brunch reservations confirmed. It was supposed to be a weekend of celebrating motherhood, of remembering all the good her parents had stood for. But something gnawed at Savannah's insides, a vague unease she couldn't explain. Maybe it was the silence. Maybe it was the memory of her father's final words. "There are things I never got to tell you, things I wanted to set right." She pulled down the weathered, leather-bound Bible he'd kept by his bedside since she was a child. As it shifted, something slipped from its pages and floated to the floor. A letter, yellowed with age, edges curled like old secrets resisting light. With trembling fingers, Savannah unfolded it. The handwriting was elegant, precise, written in faded black ink. She read the opening line aloud, as if the room itself needed to hear it. "If you still love me, choose love over duty. I'm tired of hiding in the shadows of your choices." The words punched through her chest. Her father? Hiding a woman in the shadows? The signature was no clearer. Simply the letter M. Savannah sat down heavily in her father's old armchair, the leather creaking beneath her. Her heart pounded. Questions crowded in too fast. Who was M? What duty had her father chosen over love, and why had he kept this letter for over 2 decades, pressed into the Bible like a sacred confession? Her father had been a moral man, a man of faith, a man of routine and rules. But someone, M, had loved him, and clearly he had loved her back. Savannah's eyes lingered on the signature, tracing the single solitary letter again and again. M, not a name, a mask. A door had opened, and behind it, a different version of the man she thought she knew. A man entangled in something messy, possibly scandalous. As the night wore on, the letter remained in her lap, her untouched tea gone cold beside her. Her mind wouldn't let go. Something had been buried. Deep. And now, on the eve of a day meant for celebrating her mother, Savannah was being pulled into a mystery that would not rest. She didn't know it yet, but this letter would change everything. The next morning, Mother's Day sunlight spilled softly over the white roses blooming outside the Hartley family home. Savannah stood at the base of the old front steps, letter in hand, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm. She hadn't been here in weeks, not since the funeral. The place looked the same, a picture of suburban grace. Trimmed hedges, lavender in bloom, shutters freshly painted. But to Savannah, it felt like a stage set for a play she was no longer sure she understood. She hadn't told anyone about the letter, not her cousin, not her best friend, and certainly not her mother. Elaine Hartley answered the door, dressed immaculately in her signature cream blouse and pearl earrings, her silver-streaked hair pinned back with clinical precision. Her smile was brittle. "Savannah," she said, as if tasting the name before letting it out. "You didn't say you were coming by." "I know," Savannah replied. "I needed something from Dad's study." Elaine's eyes narrowed slightly, but she stepped aside. Inside, the house was frozen in time. Every photo, every china figurine still in place. Savannah moved slowly through the halls, as though expecting a specter to greet her. In the den, she ran her fingers along the mantel, pausing at a wedding photo, her mother and father on the church steps, beaming. But now, she couldn't help but wonder, what was real? She returned to the living room, where Elaine sat stiffly in an armchair, folding linen napkins with robotic grace. "Mom, do you remember anyone named M?" Savannah asked carefully. Elaine's hands stopped mid-fold, her eyes flicked up, sharp, calculating. What sort of question is that? Savannah kept her voice steady. I found a letter. It was old. It looked personal. Elaine's lips pressed into a line. Your father kept many things. He had trouble letting go. That doesn't mean they were meaningful. It sounded meaningful, Savannah pushed. It said, choose love over duty. She watched as Elaine's posture stiffened even more. You don't recognize the handwriting? Elaine stood abruptly, smoothing invisible wrinkles from her skirt. You shouldn't go digging into the past, Savannah. It serves no one. Your father is gone. Let that be enough. But Savannah was already noticing things. A photo missing from the end table, a name scratched out in an old guest book, the framed wedding certificate on the wall, backdated by just a few weeks too perfectly. Little inconsistencies, each one whispering. I just want the truth, Savannah said softly. Elaine turned her back. No one ever really wants that, not once they hear it. The conversation ended there, but the silence screamed louder than words. Savannah left shortly after, but not before slipping upstairs and searching through old drawers and boxes. In the back of a linen closet, she found something strange. A bundle of torn journal pages, partially water-damaged, dated from the year before she was born. The entries were cryptic, full of phrases like, our secret, I won't be hidden much longer, and she doesn't deserve him. Most were unsigned, but one page, faint but visible, ended with the letter M. Back in her car, Savannah clutched the page tightly, her fingers trembling. Her mother was hiding something, maybe everything, and Savannah wasn't going to stop until the truth had a voice. Savannah hadn't slept much since her visit to her childhood home. The letter, the journal fragments, her mother's chilling silence, it all pulsed like static in the back of her mind. She felt like a woman unspooling, thread by thread, drawn back into a history that was never fully hers to begin with. The next lead came almost accidentally. Savannah stopped by the Community History Center to drop off a donation of her father's books. The volunteer at the front desk, Mrs. Langston, a friend of the family from years ago, recognized the Hartley name immediately. Oh, your father was such a handsome man, she said wistfully, flipping through an old scrapbook from a town fundraiser. Everyone adored him back then, especially the ladies. Savannah forced a polite smile, her fingers tightening around her bag. He was very charming. Mrs. Langston pulled a faded envelope from the bottom of the box. Sometimes these old photos surprise you, she chuckled. Here, take a peek. This was one of our Valentine's Day galas. What year was that, 99? Savannah froze as she slid the glossy photo from the envelope. There was her father, unmistakable in his tailored navy suit, his arm around a striking woman in a burgundy gown. The way they looked at each other, it wasn't casual, it was intimate. Worse, Savannah recognized the timeline. That picture was taken months before her parents' wedding. She turned the photo over. In faded ballpoint pen, someone had written, to T with all my heart, M. Savannah's hands began to tremble. The initial again, M. Her father had been in love with this woman while still married, or before marrying Elaine, but either way, the implications hit hard. Driving home, Savannah couldn't breathe. Her mother had always portrayed herself as the woman who stood by her man, the dutiful wife. The church-going matriarch who endured her husband's high-stakes legal career, long nights, and political ambitions with quiet grace. But now Savannah had proof. Photos didn't lie. Her mother hadn't been the only woman, and possibly not even the first. That night, Savannah pulled out a dusty photo album from the attic, one she hadn't opened in years. Tucked in the back cover was another loose photograph, this one even more damning. Her father and the same woman from the gala, embracing on the lawn of a lake house she didn't recognize. They looked young, carefree, in love. This time, Savannah noticed something else. Her mother's face, just barely in the background, near the porch, watching. The image sent a chill down her spine. Savannah had spent her whole life believing in a version of love that had been edited, cropped, and retouched for public consumption. But what if everything had been arranged? What if the woman she called Mom had once stood on the outside looking in and clawed her way to the center? Savannah slid the photo into a folder marked simply, Truth, because she was done with illusions. The spring air was thick, with the scent of blooming magnolias and the hum of new beginnings. For most people, it was wedding season. For Savannah Hartley, it was just another cruel reminder that love was often a performance, one she helped stage for others while her own heart remained in lockdown. The letter. The photos. Her mother's silence. It was all too much. Savannah needed something familiar, a touchstone. So she stopped by Oak and Ember, the rustic wine bar where her ex-fiancé, Griffin Blake, had opened his new architecture firm upstairs. It had been years since they'd spoken. Too many unsent messages, too many unspoken wounds. But something pulled her there. Curiosity? Or something she didn't want to name? Griffin looked up from a conversation near the patio and did a double take. "Savannah," he said slowly, a flicker of old warmth and caution in his voice. "Griff," she replied, trying to smile. "Didn't expect to see you here. Well, I did. You work here. But you know what I mean." He chuckled. "Still bad with small talk, huh?" There it was. That easy rhythm they used to have, like a melody they could never quite erase. He gestured toward a quiet table. "Wanna sit?" They caught up in careful bursts. How her wedding business had expanded, how he'd finally built that lake house they'd once dreamed of. But then came the gut punch. "I'm engaged," Griffin said, eyes watching hers too closely. "Her name's Juliet. Just moved to town. It's kind of fast, I guess, but it feels right." Savannah blinked, holding back a storm behind her lashes. "Juliet. That's nice." He nodded, but his voice dipped. "Funny thing is, she reminds me of you. Not just the way she talks, but the way she holds things back. Like there's a part of her always in hiding." Savannah looked down at her untouched drink. Maybe some people have their reasons. A week later, Savannah was hired, ironically, as the backup planner for Juliet's engagement party. When she finally met her, everything shifted. Juliet was stunning, poised, and oddly familiar. Her eyes, wide, amber-flecked, sparked a flicker of déjà vu. She had Savannah's laugh, her posture, even her slightly crooked smile when she was nervous. But it wasn't just resemblance, it was recognition. The kind that makes your skin prickle before your brain catches up. They sat across from each other, discussing florals and seating arrangements, but there was an unspoken pull. A gravity between them neither woman could name, but both felt. Later that night, Savannah pulled out her baby pictures. For the first time in her life, she noticed something haunting. A photo of her as a toddler, next to a framed photo of a baby girl who wasn't her. Similar features, similar curls. But the girl in the frame had a name scratched faintly into the bottom, Juliet. Savannah's hands began to shake. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't fate. This was connected. And somehow, Griffin had just proposed to a woman tangled in the same path Savannah was trying to unravel. Savannah returned to her childhood neighborhood with one mission: to find the missing pieces of her father's past. She was running out of places to search, and people who hadn't already shut their doors and their mouths. Elaine, as usual, remained an elegant fortress. Not a word, not a flicker of guilt, just polite sips of tea and vacant smiles. But Savannah had grown up watching her mother manipulate emotions with the precision of a surgeon. Silence, she now understood, was Elaine's sharpest weapon. So Savannah took a different route. She visited Rosewood Glen Assisted Living, where many of her parents' oldest friends now lived out their days in memory's dimming glow. The hall smelled faintly of lavender and lemon polish. Savannah wasn't even sure who she was looking for, just someone who remembered before the rewrites. She found Mr. Amos Whitaker, her father's old law partner, sitting in a courtyard playing chess against himself. He blinked slowly when she approached. "Savannah Hartley," he murmured. "You look just like your... well, never mind." That pause caught her ear like a snare. "Just like my who, Mr. Whitaker." He chuckled absently, moving a knight. "Melody always said you would." Her blood iced. "Melody?" she repeated carefully. "Who's Melody?" Mr. Whitaker frowned, suddenly alert. Elaine! Of course! That's what she used to go by. Back when we were all younger and trying to make names for ourselves. Savannah's breath caught in her throat. My mother's name was Melody? Don't know why she changed it. She just started going by her middle name one day, said it sounded more refined, more wifely. He chuckled again, unaware of the earthquake he'd just triggered. Melody Elaine Winslow. Ambition in high heels, that one. Winslow. Savannah had never heard that surname before. Not on any documents, not on any family trees. The name meant nothing, and everything. She excused herself moments later, walking out into the sun-drenched parking lot as if in a dream. Melody. M. The initial from the letter. Her hands trembled as she pulled out the crumpled page again. Please choose love over duty. Yours, M. For days, she stared at the letter like it might reveal something new. She examined her mother's old yearbooks, college transcripts, a single, blurry article from a local theater program where Melody Winslow had played the ingenue in A Streetcar Named Desire. Everywhere she turned, Melody left fragments like a ghost who had tried to vanish. Savannah no longer knew what was worse, that her mother had been the other woman, or that she had intentionally buried her identity to become someone else, someone acceptable, someone permanent. And suddenly, Savannah wasn't just unraveling a scandal, she was uncovering a woman who had rewritten herself into Savannah's mother. But who had she been before? And what else had she been willing to erase? Savannah hadn't meant to go back to the attic, but the smell of old dust, the faint scent of her father's cologne that lingered in the corners of the house, called to her like a siren's song. It had been a year since he passed, but his absence left an empty space that never quite seemed to fill. She was looking for nothing. Or everything. A single box, shoved behind others, caught her eye. It was worn but sturdy, one of the ones she had helped pack years ago when they moved her father's things into storage. Savannah knew that box. It had always been there, nestled among other forgotten relics. But this one? This one felt different. Like a piece of her past, her mother's carefully constructed image was about to crack wide open. She climbed into the attic, the air stifling. Her heart thudded as she pulled the box closer, her fingers brushing over old trinkets, discarded photos, and her father's journal that she had never dared open. But this box was heavy. She popped the lid and gasped. Inside were journals, dozens of them. But it wasn't just that. There were letters, receipts, tickets from places Savannah had never heard of, places her mother had never mentioned. She flipped through a few journals before finding the one that made her blood run cold. The handwriting was unmistakable. It was Elaine's. But this journal was different. This wasn't the controlled, perfect facade Savannah had grown up with. This was a woman undone by her own choices, and it was all spelled out in vivid, painful detail. Savannah read in a trance, each word like a nail in her coffin. April 3rd, 1996. I feel him pulling away. It's not that I don't love him, I do. But he still loves her. He talks about her. I can hear it in his voice. How can I be the second choice? How can I be the one he left her for? And yet, here I am, with him. His touch, his kiss, his life. She flipped to another entry, this time dated months later. May 20th, 1996. It's done. He's with me now. The lie is finally complete. I've done it. I've taken what I wanted. She doesn't even know. But I have him. I'm the wife now. Not her. Me. And Savannah is mine. My child. She'll never know the truth. She'll never know I was the one who seduced her father. She'll never know that I pushed her mother aside so I could be the woman he married. Savannah's chest tightened. Her vision blurred. This was the truth she had been chasing. Her mother hadn't just been a victim of circumstance. She had played the game. She had seduced her father, manipulated him into leaving his wife, and erased the woman who had been there first. But the most damning part? It was all calculated. Every word, every action, every step of the way. Savannah sat back, breathless. The world around her seemed to spin. Her mother, the woman who had raised her, who had taught her to be strong, to be independent, to be dignified, was a master manipulator. She had destroyed a family to create her own. And Savannah? She had been the product of that destruction. Savannah couldn't process it all. Her heart was a broken record, skipping over each painful beat. She had always known something was off. The distance, the coldness, the silent battles her parents fought behind closed doors. But this was a betrayal of an entirely different magnitude. She closed the journal with shaking hands. The silence of the attic seemed to echo through her very bones. Suddenly, it all became clear. Elaine hadn't just won her father. She had created a family built on lies and deception. And now Savannah was trapped in the wreckage of that past, unable to escape, unable to forget. But there was one more piece she needed to find. One final truth that would shatter everything. Savannah sat in her car, staring at the envelope in her lap. The DNA test results were sealed inside, but the weight of the paper felt heavier than anything she had ever held in her life. For the past few days, her mind had raced. Was Juliet her half-sister? The notion had seemed impossible when it first crept into her thoughts, but then, the odd connection she'd felt when they met, the inexplicable tension every time she saw Griffin by her side, it all started to add up. What if it wasn't just some strange coincidence? What if this new woman in town, this elegant, poised Juliet, wasn't just a distant stranger? What if she was tied to her by blood? She had to know. She couldn't live in this fog of uncertainty any longer. Savannah took a breath, steadying herself before pulling the results from the envelope. Her fingers trembled as she unfolded the paper. The familiar genetic lingo seemed to blur before her eyes. She skimmed over the technical details, percentages, matches, markers, but it wasn't the science that mattered. It was the final conclusion, 99.9% match. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Juliet Blake, the woman engaged to her ex-fiancé, wasn't just some random stranger. She was her sister. Savannah's heart hammered in her chest, her breath shallow as panic rose in her throat. She couldn't process the enormity of what she was seeing. How could this be? How could she have spent all these years in a family that wasn't even what she thought it was? How could she have been so blind? The image of Juliet's warm smile, the way she had embraced Savannah like a friend, like someone she could trust, now seemed like a mockery. And Griffin, the man she had once envisioned spending forever with, the one who had helped shape her idea of love. He had been in her life for years, yet he was just another piece of the tangled web. Everything she thought she knew was slipping away, like sand through her fingers. Savannah slammed her hand against the steering wheel in frustration. The raw fury that bubbled inside her felt too much to contain. She had been so focused on exposing her mother's lies, so obsessed with unearthing the past, that she hadn't stopped to wonder if the most gut-wrenching secret of all was closer than she ever imagined. Her mother hadn't just destroyed another woman's life, she had destroyed Savannah's sense of self. And she had done it for her own selfish reasons. But Juliet? She wasn't just a pawn in the game. She was a casualty too, a child of the same man but under entirely different circumstances. Savannah took a long, ragged breath. Her mind raced again, but this time it wasn't panic, it was strategy. What would she do with this knowledge? She couldn't simply confront Juliet and tell her the truth. The woman had her own life, her own relationships. And God, she was about to marry Griffin. How could Savannah rip their world apart just because of some misplaced genetic code? But could she not tell Juliet? Could she live with the secret and the twisted knot of silence between them? No, she couldn't. And yet, she felt her resolve faltering as soon as the idea to tell Juliet made its way through her mind. Was she protecting the truth for the right reasons? Or was she looking to tear something down just because it was easier than dealing with the pain? Before she could stop herself, she was dialing Juliet's number. The phone rang once, then twice. Savannah could feel the tremor in her hands as the line connected. Hello? Juliet's voice, so warm, so familiar, hit her like a punch in the stomach. How was she supposed to tell her this? How was she supposed to change her entire reality in one conversation? "Juliet, it's me," Savannah said, the words tight in her throat. There's something I need to tell you. Something you don't know." The line went quiet. Savannah could almost hear the weight of her words pressing through the receiver. "What is it, Savannah?" Juliet's voice was hesitant now, sensing the shift in the air. Do you know who your father really is?" Savannah's voice cracked, and she immediately regretted the question. Juliet let out a nervous laugh. "Of course I do, Savannah." "Griffin, No," Savannah interrupted, her heart pounding. "Not Griffin, I mean your biological father. Because, you see, you and we share the same father." A long silence stretched between them. Savannah's hands went clammy, the world feeling distant as the truth settled into place. It wasn't until Juliet's voice broke the silence that Savannah realized she had been holding her breath the entire time. "Wait, what?" Juliet asked, the confusion and shock in her tone unmistakable. Savannah's breath hitched. "It's true, Juliet, I have proof. We're sisters." The night was heavy with perfume and champagne, the clinking of glasses mingling with soft music in the background. The engagement party was in full swing, an elegant affair hosted at Griffin's family's sprawling estate. The grand ballroom sparkled under chandeliers, the kind of glittering setting Savannah had once imagined for her own wedding, before everything fell apart. Tonight, however, it wasn't Savannah's wedding she was thinking about. It was the woman who had replaced her, Juliet. The woman who was now in the arms of the man she had once loved. Savannah stood at the edge of the room, feeling like an outsider at her own life. Guests bustled around her, greeting each other, laughing, drinking. She should have been happy for them. After all, Juliet was about to marry Griffin. But the truth had already seeped in, too deep to ignore. Her half-sister was engaged to the man she had once pictured a future with. The man who had been the love of her life, now about to marry the woman she shared blood with. She couldn't just stand there and pretend that everything was fine. Not anymore. Savannah watched as Juliet, radiant, glowing in a silk gown that shimmered with every movement, laughed with friends, her smile bright and genuine. Griffin stood beside her, a hand resting possessively on her back. The couple looked perfect, like something out of a fairy tale. And yet the words echoing in Savannah's mind felt like poison. "We are sisters." How could this be real? How could a lifetime of secrets, a web of lies spun by her mother, leave her standing here, caught in a twisted game? Juliet had no idea. She couldn't. She was living in a bubble that Savannah had burst just days ago, with the revelation of their shared father. Savannah's hands trembled as she raised her glass of wine, the sweet red liquid swirling beneath the dim light. Her mind raced, wondering if she should tell them. Should she spill the truth now? At the very moment everyone was celebrating what they thought was the perfect union. Her eyes locked on Griffin and the emotions swirled, a mixture of resentment, longing, and guilt. She could still remember their last fight, the one that ended their engagement. It felt like it had been a lifetime ago. He had been the one to leave her, choosing his career, his ambitions, over their relationship. But what did that matter now? He was standing there with Juliet smiling, the two of them caught up in their own world. "Savannah?" She turned sharply at the sound of Griffin's voice. He was standing just behind her, his eyes searching hers with a familiar, soft expression that made her stomach twist. "Griffin," she said, forcing a smile she didn't feel. "It's a lovely party, congratulations." He smiled, though there was a hint of uncertainty in his eyes. "Thanks. It means a lot, having you here. I didn't think you'd come." Savannah bit her lip, the words threatening to spill. "You're engaged to my sister, Griffin. Do you even know the truth? Do you have any idea what's really happening?" But she held her tongue, the weight of the moment bearing down on her. "I couldn't miss it," Savannah replied, her voice steady despite the storm inside. "You deserve it, both of you." Griffin smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. There was something off about the way he was looking at her, like he was still waiting for something. Still hoping for something that wasn't there. Before she could say anything else, a voice interrupted. "Savannah, you look stunning," came Juliet's voice, light and warm. She was standing beside Griffin now, her hand on his arm, her eyes scanning Savannah's face with a curious, almost playful expression. "Thank you," Savannah said, forcing another smile. "You look Beautiful. Juliet beamed. I'm so glad you came. Griffin's been talking about how much it meant to him that you'd be here tonight. We've missed you, Sav. Savannah froze, the words striking deeper than Juliet could ever know. We've missed you. Juliet had no idea how much Savannah had missed the woman standing before her. The woman who was now about to marry the man Savannah once believed she would spend forever with. The air between them crackled with tension, but Juliet didn't seem to notice. She was too busy smiling, talking about wedding plans, the venue, the flowers, the dresses. But Savannah wasn't listening anymore. Her mind was a blur, every decision she had made, every conversation she had had, swirling into a singular, unbearable truth. I need to talk to you, Savannah said suddenly, turning to Juliet, her voice sharp. It wasn't what she planned to say, but it had already slipped out before she could stop it. The words felt like a challenge, like a battle cry. Juliet blinked, taken aback. Talk to me? About what? Savannah didn't know if she could go through with it. She was on the edge. Everything inside her screamed to pull Juliet aside, to tell her everything, to expose their shared father, to tear away the veil of this perfect engagement and show Juliet the truth. But Griffin was standing there, his face unreadable and the words caught in her throat. If she told them now, it would change everything. It would destroy everything. Nothing, Savannah said quietly, the battle within her raging. Forget I said anything. Juliet looked at her for a long moment, her brow furrowing with concern, but then she smiled again. Okay, let's enjoy the night. We'll talk later. Savannah forced a smile in return, but it didn't reach her eyes. The truth was suffocating her, and every minute she waited made the weight of it heavier. The walls of the Hartley family home had always felt like a sanctuary to Savannah, but tonight they felt like a prison, cold, looming, suffocating. The house was quiet, far too quiet, save for the echoes of Savannah's footsteps as she paced back and forth in the living room. Her mother's voice, stern and unyielding, still echoed in her mind. She had lied. And now, Savannah was about to confront her. Elaine Hartley had always been the picture of composure, polished, elegant, a woman who carried the weight of years of social expectations like a crown. But as Savannah stood in the house she had grown up in, the familiar smell of lavender and old books no longer brought comfort. Everything about this place had been built on secrets, secrets that were crumbling faster than Savannah could keep up with. She was trembling, but not from fear. No, this was something else. It was a quiet fury, the kind that burned deep, quiet but intense. How had she missed the signs? How had she allowed herself to live a lie for so long? It wasn't just the betrayal of her father that tore at her. It was the fact that her mother, her own mother, had played the central role in that deception. Savannah turned to face the door. She knew Elaine was inside, somewhere upstairs. She had to do this now. She couldn't wait any longer. The truth needed to be spoken, or else she would never be able to forgive herself. Taking a deep breath, Savannah made her way to the stairs. The house was still. No footsteps echoed from above. With each step, she felt as though she was walking deeper into a darkened maze, each turn taking her closer to the center of the mystery she had been trying to solve for months. Elaine sat in the study, her back to the door, peering over old letters, the same ones Savannah had once thought were simply part of her mother's nostalgia. She hadn't seen Elaine this way in years. Distracted, her sharp features softened by the wear of time. The woman who had always been the calm, collected pillar of their home now seemed small, vulnerable. But Savannah knew better than to believe in that vulnerability. You have some explaining to do, Mother, Savannah said, her voice steady, but her heart pounding. Elaine didn't jump, didn't flinch. She slowly turned in her chair, her lips pressing together, her eyes narrowing. The mask was back, the practiced calm of the woman who always kept control. I don't know what you think you've uncovered, Savannah, Elaine said coolly, her voice devoid of emotion. But you've always been far too curious for your own good. Too curious? Savannah's laugh was bitter, a hollow sound that made her mother's eyes flicker for just a moment. Maybe I'm finally asking the right questions. Elaine stood up slowly, smoothing the front of her blouse with a calm that grated on Savannah's nerves. I don't know what you've learned, but I'll say it again. It's not your place. You don't know everything, and frankly, it's none of your business." Savannah took a step forward, her fists clenched at her sides. "It's my life, my family, my whole existence. I deserve to know the truth." Elaine's face hardened, but there was a flicker of guilt in her eyes. A brief moment, so fleeting that Savannah might have imagined it, but she didn't. Elaine was hiding something even worse than Savannah had imagined. "I wasn't always the perfect wife you think I was, Savannah," Elaine said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But you don't understand what I had to do to survive." "Survive?" Savannah's heart thundered in her chest. "You were never the scorned woman, were you? You were the other woman." Elaine's expression didn't change, but Savannah saw the tightness in her jaw, the subtle shift in her posture. "You don't know anything about what happened between your father and me. What we did, what we sacrificed, it was for you, for our family." "For me?" Savannah spat. "You sacrificed everything to become his wife, to destroy the woman he loved, to erase your own history so you could get what you wanted." Elaine's eyes darkened, but she didn't look away. "You think I wanted this? You think I wanted to live a life built on lies? No, Savannah. I did what I had to do. For us. For you." Savannah felt her hands tremble, but she didn't back down. "The truth is, I'm the product of a lie. A love triangle that you created. You seduced your best friend's husband, faked a miscarriage and destroyed their family. You stole my life. My father's love. You manipulated everything to make sure you got what you wanted." Elaine's lip curled, but there was no denial. Instead, she straightened her shoulders, her voice growing sharper. "I didn't steal anything. I took what was mine." Savannah felt the heat rise in her chest, the anger and heartbreak rising in waves. "And what about Juliet? What about her? The woman who has no idea that we're sisters. She has no clue what you've done, what we are to each other, what you really did to our family." Elaine's face twisted with something. Pain, guilt, or maybe both. But she didn't speak. The silence was heavy, oppressive. And then, just when Savannah thought she might burst from the weight of it all, Elaine spoke again, her voice softer, but with a chilling finality. "There's something else you don't know," Elaine said, her eyes locking onto Savannah's. "Something you'll never be able to understand. And I'll never tell you, no matter how much you beg." Savannah's breath caught. "What are you talking about? What could be worse than this?" But Elaine only shook her head. "You'll find out soon enough." Savannah's heart skipped a beat. The words sent a shiver down her spine, and for the first time in her life, she felt truly afraid of her mother. The morning sun cast a golden hue across the Hartley estate, but the warmth of spring couldn't thaw the chill Savannah felt in her bones. Mother's Day. A day she used to celebrate with white roses, handwritten cards, and carefully planned brunches. But today, everything felt like a cruel joke. She stood at the edge of the family's rose garden, staring blankly at the white petals now tinged with red, a cruel metaphor for innocence lost. The entire family was gathering soon for the traditional Mother's Day luncheon, a tradition Savannah had once cherished. Now it was the stage for a truth that could shatter generations. She had spent sleepless nights piecing it all together, and after the confrontation with Elaine, there was no turning back. The past wasn't just a buried secret, it was alive, pulsing through the veins of every person who had ever loved her, and today it would all come into the light. Inside the dining room, laughter rang out, the kind of laughter born of ignorance. Juliet, glowing in her peach dress, was sipping champagne next to Griffin, her half-sister, her father's other daughter, her ex's fiancé, a walking embodiment of every tangled thread Savannah was now forced to untie. Savannah took a deep breath, her heels clicking against the hardwood as she entered the room. The chatter slowed, then stopped. All eyes turned to her. Elaine sat at the head of the table, eyes sharp, smile tight. She knew what was coming. Savannah raised her glass but didn't toast. Instead, her voice cut through the silence. "I have a Mother's Day gift for everyone. But it's not the kind that comes with wrapping paper. A nervous chuckle from one of the aunts. A cough from a cousin. Elaine's expression didn't change, but her grip on the armrest tightened. Savannah turned to Juliet. You deserve to know who you are. Who we are. Because we share more than just memories now. We share blood. Juliet blinked. What? Savannah stepped forward, placing a folder on the table. DNA test results. Photos. The half-burned journal. Your father is also my father. A gasp rippled through the room like a crack of thunder. Griffin stood up, face pale. What the hell are you saying? Savannah looked him dead in the eyes. I'm saying your fiancée is my half-sister, and my mother, our mother, has been lying to everyone for 25 years. Juliet stumbled back, hand to her mouth. No, that's not possible. Elaine finally stood, her voice like ice. That's enough, Savannah. But Savannah shook her head. No, it's not, because there's one more thing. One more lie you've buried so deep you thought no one would ever find it. She turned to her mother, eyes burning. Who's the third child, Elaine? A beat. The room held its breath. Elaine's mask cracked. Just for a moment. Then she laughed. A hollow, broken sound. You don't want to know, she said. Yes, I do. I need to know, Savannah insisted, because I found her. Gasps turned to murmurs as Savannah's voice trembled. My best friend, Chloe. The one who's been there for me my whole life. She's your daughter too, isn't she? Elaine's silence was confirmation enough. You gave her away, Savannah whispered. You abandoned her. The room descended into chaos, shouting, crying. Juliet fled the room, Griffin following behind. Aunts demanded answers. Cousins whispered accusations. And Elaine stood alone in the eye of the storm she had created. Savannah turned to her, one final time. You didn't just rewrite history, you stole it from all of us. You didn't just betray Dad, you betrayed every one of us. Elaine's voice was hoarse, barely audible. I did it all for you. But Savannah only shook her head. No, you did it for yourself. As she walked out of the house, the weight of generations pressing down on her, Savannah realized something powerful. Sometimes truth doesn't set you free. It burns everything down. But from the ashes, something new can rise. And maybe, just maybe, that's where her story would truly begin.